Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Ref Kimbrew Show. What up? Um, I have with me today the fabulous, the amazing, the Angel, and our first podcast show was so amazing. I just had to have a part two because there's so many rabbit holes we can go down, and you don't get a chance to go down all of them in one show. As a matter of fact, this could be a part three, four, five. I have no idea, but I think we will have a lot to share in the next coming months and years because
Yeah.
I have adopted you in the inner Kimbrew bubble, and you're there for
Uh,
life. So now you're stuck. You're captive in my podcast bubble.
okay.
And yeah, I'm excited to have you back. Thank you for taking some time out to chop it up with me. And this is going to be a lot of fun. And for those of you who are tuning into my show, I mean, I've got the Pod Brother Show and I've got the PNN Academy and Pod Brother Nation and all that fun stuff. But this is a new podcast series I'm super excited about because I'm going to be doing a lot of bar promotions and sports bar podcasts with Ref Kimbrew. You know my last name is Kimbrough, so I kind of spun off of Kimbrough with Kimbrew because we're going to focus on coffees, teas, and beers at,
Oh.
at those sports bars. And we might even do a taste test, and we might have some recipe experiments with different spirits with different coffees and teas. Who knows? Any excuse to mix a few drinks and have some fun with your friends is what this podcast is going to be about, and I'm super excited about that. So, if you're a microbrew out there, or a coffee shop, or a tea shop, and you want to have Ref Kimbrew come in and do a Ref Kimbrew podcast and highlight some of your teas, coffees, and brewskis, then I'm your guy. You can catch me at kimbrewgame.com or Ref Kimbrew or even Kimbrew.com. All of those are all domain names that go to one place, and that's me, Ref Kimbrew. So enough about me. Let's go back to how you get down, the angel. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's an interesting time for us here on the planet, and just staying grounded and keeping positive regardless of all the craziness around us.
You
Stay
know, I
connected
I
to the creativity.
I love that you say that because if you go into no matter what you think the heinous situation that is in front of you with the attitude that you're going to keep it positive, you will find that you actually will do that. You'll keep it positive, and any and everything that comes across your path becomes a little thing, and you decide not to sweat the little thing, and all things are little because you have a positive attitude. And that positive attitude really kind of takes over. If you practice it every second, every minute, it becomes
Mhm.
autopilot. And then now it doesn't matter what's happening in your world, my world, or the world, the universe.
Yeah.
You're just you're just managing it.
Yeah. I mean, the best we can.
Yeah.
It's not like we're not going to have moments, right? But um and things are pretty intense right now, but that's okay. I mean, it's good to acknowledge it, know it, not deny it away,
Hmm.
but don't let it consume you and stop you in your tracks, or even push you off course.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best things to ever happen to me is to be a comedian and be in the comedy world because my take and perspective on life has completely and totally changed to the point to where it doesn't matter what the most tragic thing that can happen to me. I'm always thinking how I can spin that into some kind of a comedy material based on some pain and suffering and that
Yes.
we we go through, and that's the root of most comedy
Yes.
is that pain and that suffering, and how do you make levity of it in order to survive it? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
it has trained me to just have a completely different perspective on pretty much anything and everything, good or bad. Like even in death, like I'm thinking about, having a speaker buried with me talking about, being in a coffin and talking about, my friends and people who were at my funeral and how I would think about them if I were gone. All in a comedy routine, it's like imagine sitting around, a coffin and you hearing me like inside of it saying, okay, it's over, I'm dead now, but hey, that $20 you owe me, why don't you give it to whatever. And it's like,
Yes, yes.
all the relationship issues, I can like
Yeah,
air them out now, everybody
yeah,
who was my favorite, you know, I just like who, only kind of a comedian would think about your own death as something that you could make fun. It's almost like I'm looking
yeah.
forward to being in that coffin just so I can imagine the looks on the people's faces when they hear my voice coming out of the coffin. So it's stuff like that, stupid stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. But honestly, I was thinking about it this morning. I'm like, there's never been a more important time for comedians than right in this moment.
Oh yeah,
Uh, for us, at
yeah,
least. It's we really need the levity. We absolutely need it. And, I mean, it's been scientifically proven that laughter, elevates the frequencies in our
yeah,
bodies and
yeah,
it's healing. It's not just some kind of thing that's like, oh, that's nice. It's like it is actually physically healing. There's a huge benefit to it. So, I mean, look, you're doing good work. You're doing important work.
yeah.
See?
Well, you're doing good work too, providing that music so people can heal from those frequencies and those sounds that resonate with your heart and your mind and your whole body, your auras and all
Yeah.
that stuff. You're doing
Oh,
good work too.
thank you.
So I take my hat off to you, the angel.
Well, same here.
So, who are some of your favorite comedians? Like, who do you like to
Oh, I
like
mean,
tune into?
like throughout my life, good,
Yeah.
kind of, I mean, George Carlin, Richard Pryor. I'm trying to think of, I mean, there's a lot of more recent comedians that I've come across that have been, and then I don't remember. Like the names are like, I'm like, okay, a lot of information in that brain. Sometimes this stuff doesn't come immediately to me, but just in terms of like, when I'm thinking about like politics and world issues and people that really spoke to things on a level where we could completely get it, and it's really smart and it's biting and it's raw and and I kind of feel like George Carlin and Richard Pryor really both for me from when I was very young, you know, I just really appreciate where they're both coming from, just the sanity value. Like, I think about sometimes, when Bill Maher will talk about stuff, and he can and then he's a controversial figure, but he also can tap into something that is vitally important to discuss and get it out there and make fun of it and do things about it that also, get us to a place where we're like, phew, man, we're not alone. Okay. There's
Yeah.
others that think like I do. There are other
Yeah.
humans on the
Yeah.
planet
Yeah.
that actually can see through the bullshit that we're dealing with and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you listed off my top two favorite, but I also love Bill Burr. That dude, he's in that. I got a chance to meet him briefly before I left Boston back in '93 for New York. I love Bill Burr. He is hysterical. I love Jon Stewart. Got a chance to like meet
so,
him at
yeah,
the Boston Comedy Club in the Village back in the '90s. Uh,
nice.
Dave Chappelle opened for me back in the '80s and the early '90s when I lived in Boston. I love his work.
Yeah,
Uh,
me too.
Buster Keaton. When I was a kid, I just watched his movies and I laughed and I recognized the value of comedy and laughing then just
Yeah.
watching Buster Keaton, and I became a very physically animated kind of comedic kid. You know, I was into a
Right.
lot of that slapstick stuff to make my grandparents laugh, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I love all that stuff. Trevor Noah, Trevor Noah. I mean,
Yeah.
he is very, very, very funny, bright,
And
brilliant,
smart,
smart.
but I think really all the great comedians are just because you have to be an observer of human nature. You have to be analytical in order to flip it so that it's
Um,
like you said, you take the hardest, most difficult, painful subjects and you make people laugh. And
yeah.
that's a real skill. That's a huge skill.
Well, you have to take just about every situation and kind of break it down into a logical module in order for you to take it to a ridiculous module.
Yeah.
Because the more you can exaggerate how ridiculous it is, but yet find where the logic is within the subject matter you're talking about, that's when you, the audience, can then put your own third mind's eye together of an image, which is what you're laughing at. You're laughing at the picture you create in your brain based on a few key clues we give you
Yeah.
and some logic and some facts, but then to use our imagination to um, project that into how ridiculous something can be is why we laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean,
every
Eddie
single
Murphy.
person,
That reminds me, I mean, then I'm thinking, like, of course, Eddie Murphy. I mean, when he first came out with Raw,
yeah,
I mean, it was groundbreaking and hilarious and all of these things. But yes, the ridiculous in the logic and
yeah,
then stretching it to that place. Sorry, I'm just remembering how much of an impact he had
yeah,
on
yeah. We loved Eddie Murphy. I
that
mean,
era.
we lived watching him on Saturday Night Live, and it was,
Yeah,
groundbreaking stuff. And to see his comedy and Raw again, like you said, was
right.
some
Yeah.
comedy at the time, and
Yeah,
it was pretty
exactly.
cool, pretty amazing. Bill Cosby also was somebody who influenced me back in the day. I know he went through a lot of controversy with latter in his life, but he was somebody that I pulled a lot of comedy inspiration from the
Yeah.
juxtaposition between his comedy and Richard Pryor and George Carlin. I found myself pulling um, a play from their playbook with how I developed my comedy when I was a young comedian. And it was I think to be my generation and live in a time where, if you think about it, this is probably the sweetest time a human being can be on the planet since the beginning of human beings going back, I don't know, 10,000 years. Because it took 5,000 years to go from, you know, dragging a club to creating a wheel,
Yeah.
and then from the another 3,000 years for civilization and science and all that to develop. But to live in a time where when you were a kid, there was no debris in space. Think about it.
Oh, yeah.
There was no man-made debris in space.
Mm.
There was a telephone that had a party line,
Yep.
and there were no phone message machines,
No.
and everything relied on snail mail, no phone machines, and party lines on the phone. Two,
Yeah.
video on your wrist, like Dick
Right.
Tracy,
Yep.
smartphones. There's more debris in space right now than we even know.
Oh,
And
God.
and and all this. technology and evolution of civilization and mankind, we got to experience it in our entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
No other humans on Earth got a chance to experience the evolution of civilization that fast in their lifetime.
Yeah. You're right.
We're the
Interesting.
only ones that has the opportunity to do that. And
Yeah.
and and the generations that are born behind us, they're born with smartphones
Yeah.
and computers and it's that's all cool and stuff. But I think my generation to appreciate a mechanical world that turned into an analog world, that turned into a digital world, that turned into a cyber world, all of those transformations of our world in our lifetime, I think is a luxury.
It's amazing. Yeah. It
It's a
really,
luxury.
yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It is,
And
it's funny when you're talking about like, there you are watching video on your wrist. And I immediately thought of Get Smart, the series,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
All the
all
like
that stuff.
the shoe phone. He'd like
Yeah,
take his shoe off and like move the heel
yeah,
and get on the phone. It was just,
funny.
I mean, but like this stuff is possible now. I
Yeah,
mean, the goofiest things that people came up with back then,
yeah,
um, they're happening and
yeah,
beyond. So yeah.
yeah. It's cool stuff. Um, so let's get back into a conversation that we had earlier before we actually came on. You were talking about a lot of people don't know the difference between a soundtrack and a um, um,
Score album.
yeah, a score album. Yes.
Yeah.
So can you explain the difference between what those two are? Because a lot of people they may not know the difference between a score uh, album and a soundtrack
Yeah.
or a
So, you know, traditionally a soundtrack album, which I think was like the first thing that people released back in the day, you know, would mostly be the songs that were licensed to a film. Um, Even, this was going way back and before score from television shows were released. Um, so that's what people are looking for when they hear soundtrack. They immediately think, oh, I'm going to get all the songs from that show or that television show or that film. Whereas when we're releasing the Heist 88 score album, that is not about the songs at all. It's all the original music that has been written for specifically for that project. um, and so that is created by the composer. It has nothing to do with all those cool songs that we all love that might be licensed. And in this particular film, in fact, there are some 80s classics in there, things like What People Do for Money and Love Come Down, and just some fun things in there, pump up the volume, you know. Um, but those are not on this album because they're nothing to do with the score. I created 67 minutes of original score for this film. It's almost wall to wall. Once we get out of Act One and Two, it's pretty much wall to wall. As we get, as things get more and more kind of intense, um, and uh, and the difference also, I mean, I can kind of extrapolate from there. So we also there are many different ways in which composers work on a project, whether it's film or television. Some do not work to picture; they just create a body of work, and they allow a music editor to cut things in, and maybe they'll tweak them a little bit once they're in place. But um, I don't work that way. I work very nuanced to picture. Um, even when I'm brought in early enough, uh, it's I find that what really works and how I build the palette of sounds is to work to picture because you can read a script, and I read them all the time, and I can picture something very well. But the truth is, how it's shot is so vitally important to how it needs to be scored and how it's edited. So the tone starts there for me. And then that's the tone, of course, that I want to help enhance once I've had those conversations with a filmmaker in film, and it's usually the showrunner and producers in television. Once we've had those conversations, then I have my roadmap, and that's where, once I get anything to look at. So, for instance, with Heist 88, I knew it was going to be tight for time, and it was going to be very labor intensive for me to get those cues done and produced up to the level that I really wanted to get them. And so I asked them if I could even look at dailies and just start seeing what they'd shot, and then getting rough assemblies. And so I started at least writing even to those rough cuts, so that so I knew what I wanted to do, and developed some of those important themes, which I did. And then, of course, the real magic, the super magic part of it comes after we've locked picture. So that's a whole new, that's really where the roadmap starts, is in
Yeah, so cool.
those spotting sessions, where I sit with, director, on a film, director, producers, picture editor, music editor, music supervisor. And we just go through it literally first frame to last frame until we've discussed every single piece of temp music in there and decide, and really my job in those sessions and those meetings is to absorb and really listen, because sometimes there's a lot of conflicting um, aspirations coming at me, and I really need to kind of think about okay, how do I achieve that and also make sure I didn't ignore this, and also make sure that I'm completely focused on that other thing, and so it's a really important part of the process. But the difference again between score and soundtrack albums are that when you're buying or you're listening to a score album, you are listening to music that was specifically created for that film or that television show by a composer. Whereas a soundtrack could be any number of things. And some soundtrack albums, just to be confusing, have not only all the songs that were licensed to that project, but also sometimes they'll include a little bit of score. It just depends. But
Mhm.
that's the main difference.
Fascinating. Now, rumor has it, um, House Party was the first movie that was made where the soundtrack came first, and then they developed a movie around around the soundtrack. Do you know of any other projects that was done that way, where it was kind of the reverse, where normally that you shoot the movie, you picture lock, and then you guys come in
Yeah.
and figure out, through composing and music supervising what each scene will sound like, after the movie is done. But have you heard about any other projects? Because I don't think I've heard about any other projects that are done that way. That was kind of like a one-off kind of, as far as I've heard.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it now that you've mentioned it. I don't, like, right off the top of my head, I can't think of any, unless it's like a music driven project. But even like music driven documentaries and things, I don't think the only thing that they would do in a documentary is that they would before they commit to things, they'd have to make sure that they could get the rights to those songs. Like for instance, you're watching any kind of documentary about a famous musician, and their body of work, like the Beatles or something like that. The filmmaker would need to make sure that they could actually get the rights to all of those songs. Just because Paul McCartney is being interviewed doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get those rights. That's another thing that people tend to like. And specifically, I'm talking to filmmakers here when I say this, is that it's easy to think that, I know the subject of something, or I know the band, and we're good friends. To think that you can get the rights for something, but it's not necessarily the case, because many of them don't own those rights. Someone else owns the publishing, someone else owns and controls those master recordings. And so even if the band wants to give it to you for they really want it in that film, they sometimes they can't do it. they don't control it. So
Hmm.
yeah, but I can't,
Interesting.
I'm trying to really think about, because it's a cool way to work. I mean, a lot of like music video directors, I think like that they're thinking music first. Um, and they're thinking about how it's going to be edited. They can kind of all see it all in their minds before they get in there. But I can't think of anything in particular where, you know, all the music has been mapped out from a licensing standpoint before it's been
Hmm.
done.
Yeah,
So,
I can't either. And
question.
I think the music, um, the video music and MTV and those type of shows, I think inspired. I think that the inspiration for House Party came from all the music videos where the music came first, and then these directors put stories around um, the music and
Yeah.
turn these into. I remember watching a Michael Jackson Thriller video, which was a mini movie. At the time, I think it cost like $1 million to make. And
Yep.
back then,
That
we
was
were
a
like,
lot.
what? $1 million
Yeah.
dollars to make a music video was unheard of. So we were glued to that video, and I believe that was the first African American video to be on MTV,
Wow.
which was also kind of a big
Oh,
thing. And I can remember these debates and these arguments, like why isn't Michael Jackson on MTV? He's got the number one album, the number one song. He's in rotation. Every club is playing all of his dance stuff. Why is he not on MTV? And
yeah.
when that
Unbelievable.
when that thriller finally hit, I mean, a lot of us went ballistic, and to see the production that went into it was kind of mind blowing, and uh,
Absolutely.
so we could see how, oh, okay, music first, then movie, mini movie, or music video.
Yeah. Well, that's it's interesting because that's how Mark Pellington views it when he directs music videos, because he's done a ton of them. Um, it's music first, and then he has to figure out how to create his. And the way he looks at it is like, I'm creating a short film. This isn't just a music video. Um, and that's what he did with us with Words Like Daggers. Very interesting approach.
Awesome. Well, I want to dive deeper into your world. So I've shared the screen so you can pull up your website. So I would love to pull up your website and just kind of do a little mini tour, and I might stop you along the way with a question here or there. But if you don't mind sharing your screen,
I've done
and
that.
oh, that's a great picture of you.
Thank you.
That is very cool.
Thanks. You can see the whole thing, huh? Can you see
Uh,
everything?
I can. Um,
Okay.
Hold up, don't scroll down yet. Let
Okay.
me let me get a picture of that.
Oh, do you want me to here?
Yeah, leave it there. So
Okay.
this is a cool shot of. Okay, go ahead. So walk us through basically some things we need to know about you, your work, what you're doing, where you've been, where you're going.
Okay. Well, again, like I started making records in the 90s. So I have a body of work from back then. Uh pretty like a lot of down tempo, beat driven trip hop, where I was blending things like, jazz, funk, soul, reggae, into my recordings. And then, between then and now, as I'm scrolling, this is the latest release, which is the Heist 88 score album. And it's fun because I'm able to like tap into the, it's an electronic score. So
Did
it's
you
hip.
turn your sound on where we could hear that on your screen share?
Remind me, I'll try to play you some stuff because I would like you to hear it. I'm not sure if I know there's a particular um something that I have to switch on that I don't know that I have in order to share sound straight out of my computer.
Yeah, it's a little box that you check in the Zoom prompt. So if you close your screen share, open it back up,
Okay.
and select that prompt, there's going to be a box on the right-hand side.
Advanced? Is that it? Advanced and then computer audio, is that the one?
Yeah, advanced in computer audio. You're
Okay.
gonna turn your audio on,
Okay.
and
Hopefully then that will work. So now I'll share again. I'm just trying to think of the best place. It might actually be better for me to go into uh there's several things places in which there's music. Um it might be like maybe even Spotify would be the easier place to just play some stuff out of there. So I might have to try to get that open. Let
okay,
me
we can try that a little bit later if you like.
Okay. Because on the website, I'm not so sure that I have all of that. Um, well, you know what? Let me not open that yet. So I'll go back to the website. That's what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah, and then there's a box to enhance video and turn on sound, turn on
Um,
audio.
so I've got, I don't see anything about enhancing video, but do I have to share sound as well, or just
Yeah,
do,
share sound. That's it. Share sound. Yep.
why is that not? Huh. Options or share sound, optimized for video sharing.
Yep. Yep. You can do both of those.
I don't know why it's not letting me do that. Maybe, sorry. You know what? When I stay on video file, then it says share sound and optimize for video sharing. So do you think that'll do it?
Yeah, that should do it. Hit
Okay.
Click both of those and then hit share. I should be able to hear
Okay.
what you click on.
Okay. Oh, it's trying to share. What is it doing? Screen. Share. Share. Ah, okay. Here we go. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Almost got it together there. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was talking to you earlier about how it goes down, which is a 60 channels track.
Hmm.
And this is now that you're looking at this part of the screen, and I can't see you anymore. I don't know why I've lost you.
I'm on the side
Yeah, I
as
can't.
a small thumbnail.
It took the thumbnails away off my screen. I don't know, but I know you're there.
Yeah,
So
I'm here.
um so this is a still of the video that's on YouTube, and this is a pretty tripped out video that we did for How It Goes Down featuring Slim Kid Trey. For those Far Side fans, they would be pretty kind of, I think, excited by this one. So um are there things you would like me to play, or do you want me to just kind of just go
Yeah, if there's something that you think we would want to hear, go ahead and click on it for a few,
like,
uh,
yeah, no, like 20 seconds or something?
yeah,
Yeah,
for 20 seconds or so. Yeah, just so we can
get
get a
an idea. Okay.
This is how we go down.
So that's the flavor.
Mhm.
Um, Completely on the opposite end of the spectrum um, from Words Like Daggers, which I talked to you about, which is the Angel track that was released also. These are both pandemic releases. So this was 2020. And it's really, there's some really interesting stuff that's going on. This one was directed by Mark Pellington. Um, and I'll just give you a little flavor of this. I'll just kind of jump in a bit. get a little,
That's
oh,
cool.
yeah, there's some really great effects on Jaleesa, and she looks so amazing, and she's just such a great performer. Yeah, very happy about what we were able to do is like a miracle that we could actually put that together. Um, these are some of the things that are current, some of the podcast interviews and other interviews that I've been doing recently.
So is
Um,
that can you scroll down a little bit? So that first thumbnail on the left-hand side, scroll down or up, scroll back up a little bit.
oh, scroll back up. Okay.
Okay, right there. Yeah, hold that for a second. So
Okay.
owning your own music, is that like a workshop or some is that like a program that you do to help people own their own music? What's that about? That
No,
kind of
no,
nice.
this is it's interesting. The woman whose podcast this is, Alexia Maloki, uh, does a podcast about the about show business essentially, and she's a film producer and also a sales agent, and she's someone who I've involved in a film project that I'm doing that I've done. It's a beautiful documentary called Lives Beyond Motion about men in contemporary dance, and we it's it features 33 men in contemporary dance, including the legendary Bill T. Jones, Matthew Rushing, who's the associate artistic director of the Alvin Ailey Company, Lara Lubavitch, who is a Guggenheim fellow, and who they just celebrated his 80th last December. He's an amazing choreographer and dancer. All of these men, incredible. Kyle Abraham, um, who's also amazing. I mean, just an incredible group of just brilliant dancer, choreographers, and artists and human beings. And this is just such a beautiful passion project. So I produced and scored that film, which is about to hit the festival circuit. We're doing our premiere in LA at the Dance Camera West Film Festival in January. So um, I'm excited about that. Musically, it could not be more different from Heist 88 or the two things that I just played for you just now. It's its own thing. And so Alexia and I talked about, just discussing a lot of different things, different aspects of music and how it's used in film and television. And so that was her choice as far as a title for it, because we did talk a lot about ownership, in terms of the fact that I own my own catalog, and that's a big deal. So,
Ex- Explain to my audience what a sales agent does.
a sales agent helps you to sell your film and find distribution for it. And so in fact, she's right at AFM right now. Um,
It's in Las Vegas. They moved it to Vegas.
they moved it to Vegas, exactly,
Mm.
and we'll see how that goes. But she's there now, talking to distributors about our film, and I somewhere on my computer, I know I have a trailer for it, but not necessarily in here. Maybe on my IG, I could probably find it.
I
Yeah.
would love to have her on a podcast as well. I'm sure there's a few rabbit holes we could go down.
Oh, for sure. I'd be happy to connect you. Yeah. Yeah. She's cool. So yeah. So
Who
that's
are
what that.
Did you ever get a chance to work with some of the actors? I know they're completely gone and done by the time you get to the project. Sometimes you said that you got a chance to see some dailies and maybe put some concepts together as far as what you want to do. In that process, did you get a chance to meet or collaborate or kind of chop it up with any of the actors that's been on the projects, or have you been basically isolated from
I no, well, generally I'm not there for this. I have been on set a couple of times when I've been hired early enough and invited to kind of watch the production. Um, and so I've met some of the actors at that point. I Not really. There's not, yeah, there's not an opportunity for me to really interface with the actors. They are usually well gone by the time I'm in. I'm always the last one in. But but I have worked with some actors. Skeet Ulrich, he was involved in two shorts that I scored. One in which he was producing and acting, and the other where he was directing. Um, but I haven't really, when it comes to the projects that I've scored, I haven't had the opportunity to really interface much with the actors, except maybe at a cast and crew party, at the very end of things. But I do have some, really nice relationships with some actors. In particular, Amel Amin from Kidulthood. He was just a kid when he was the lead. Like, I think that was a very important role for him as a young actor. And since then, you most recently have seen him in Rustin playing MLK.
Hmm.
So he's done a hell of a lot in all these years. We
That's
are
pretty
still
cool.
in touch. Yeah, and it's just, I love that. I love seeing um, the actors that are in our productions, go on to doing big things, and he's someone that we've stayed in touch. So it's been really nice.
That is
Um,
very cool. Do
yeah.
you find that when you are, let's say you have a wish list of projects that you would want to be on, do you gravitate more toward the project itself as it relates to the type of music that you feel you can create, or do you gravitate to an A-list director or a producer or a name that you it would be somebody that you would want to work with, a director versus the, or is it a combination of both?
Um, really, people come to me. Um, not to say that there aren't directors out there that I would love to work with, but and generally they kind of know what I bring to the table, so it winds up being a really good fit. They understand that I do something where I'm going to be able to like surprise them, where I'm not strictly emulating the temp. Um, and look, sometimes directors want that. They just want someone who can just emulate exactly what it is they've temped with. They're not looking for something different. Um, but the people that sort of seek me out are looking for me to kind of, as I say, just bring something else to the table where that project, it's their baby, and I can bring them something that is unique to their project and isn't going to sound like every other thing out there, or even like every other thing I've done, because they're all very individual, very different from each other.
That's cool. I
Yeah.
see we got the boiler room up on the screen right now.
Uh,
Can you tell me like a moment where you were working on this project, the boiler room, where you surprised yourself? Like a
okay.
self-surprising moments are always something that are exciting for me when I'm in the middle of a set or doing a show or working on a project, and it's something comes to you and it turns out to be something that is pretty brilliant. Did you have a moment like that
Oh
on this
yeah,
project?
I did, because especially since it was my very first, um, my first full film that I scored. So I remember that, I started working on the film, and I got about a week in, and I was, working on several cues, and I wanted to wait until I had, a really fully fledged idea of what that I could present to Ben Younger, who was the writer director. I wanted him to be able to hear it um, at the best that he could, so that he could really tell what I was doing, and then see if he liked the direction. So I did that, and as I'm working away, I get a call from New Line, and they're like, "Listen, that Dr. Octagon track that's been temped in to the opening, Ben loves it, and you have to replace it. We can't afford it. We don't have the budget for it." And I was like, "Okay, then I'll tell you what. Let me get past this next juncture with him. Let me at least present him with the score that I'm doing, and see how he's vibing with it. And if he's digging it, then I'll know what to do with that opening piece, and I'll present that to him." And so then I had to have the conversation. And I said, "Does he know that you're telling me this?" And they said, "Oh yeah, he knows, but he's fighting it, but we can't do it." So I said, "All right, well then," and they're like, "You have to. This is it. Like this is your job. You have to replace it." And I was like, "Oh God, here we go." So I presented him with those first batch of cues, and he was digging it. And so I knew that I was on the right path with things. And I said to him, "Well, look, next time I see you, I'm gonna have something for that opening, and I know how you feel about that track, and I love it too. It's so cool. But this is what they're telling me." And he's like, "No, no, that I get it. But just know, if I'm not really like feeling it, don't think it's anything to do with you. I don't want you to feel bad about it if I don't want to use it." And I'm like, "No problem. I just have to present you with something." So the next time comes around, I have him over and I'm playing him different things. And I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to play that opening piece now." And he's like, "Oh man, I just don't want you to feel bad." I'm like, "Don't worry. This is not an ego thing. It's just, you know, just see how you feel about it. I think it's pretty cool, but see what you think." And I played him the track and I played him the whole opening, um, right from, before we see anything. And then we're over the trees and we're in the woods and we're hearing Giovanni Ribisi's voiceover. And as we the next thing that happens is that the bus comes into frame, and then we see all of these young guys on the bus going crazy. They're going into the city and they're going to go out celebrating because they've just done an insane amount of business, selling phony stocks to people basically. And they're going into a big hotel in the city, and it's going to be hookers and drugs and all kinds of craziness. And so this is what we're seeing as this piece of music comes in. And he watches the thing and he says, "Damn, Angel, I never thought you could give me something that would make me want to let go of that track." And he's like, "But you did it." So that was a that was a really big moment, for like a learning moment for me, um, about having followed my instincts about how to present this piece to him, when to present it, and then how to like nail the essence of what he loved about that other piece of music, but do something completely fresh and different. Um, but because I knew what he was liking about other things I had done, I knew what I could infuse this piece with, and so that was a huge deal. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That is very, very cool.
Yeah, and then we had a great run with that. I mean, it was really, to this day, people are like, "Oh my God, you scored Boiler Room." Like, I mean, everyone I know in sales quotes that movie constantly. You know,
Yeah,
always be closing, telling is not selling.
yeah, yeah. That is very, very, very cool. Um, so when you are kind of walking through the world, because for
Yeah.
me, like I'm not a composer or a music guy. Like, I did DJ and I do have an understanding for music and a vibe and a feeling and an emotion and getting people on the dance floor and mixing from one song to the next, sampling. Like I do have, a little bit of an idea of how to inspire people through sound. And as I rolled into my filmmaking, I found myself like seeing the world with my own theme music. And
Mm,
I hear theme music in a lot of situations I'm in.
yeah.
And I'm thinking if I was a composer, I'd probably be writing some of this down and maybe going back to the studio and see, if I can develop it. Do you think like that? Are you a type of composer that you just constantly hear music and sounds and compositions as you're going through the world, or do you don't hear that until you sit down at your desk and with a project in front of you?
I think I always, and I've said this to so many people throughout my life, there's always music in my head. It's yeah, it's just there. I don't know. But it comes to me when I need it, like specifically for a job or as an assignment of some sort, um, it the inspiration for that specific project comes when I'm looking at picture, because it's a very specific thing. I mean, it's not like, hey, Angel, just write anything you want. That doesn't happen. It's like, we know that you do cool things and we love what you do. Can you find a way to, like, we've got this piece of music like Ben Younger did, and he's not, this is a normal thing where people have temp love about something. And, it's your job as a composer to figure out how to replace that without emulating it. That's another whole thing. But yeah, the idea of like knowing what the sound should be and figuring that out really comes from the skills of being able to look at something and and infuse that world with the right palette of sounds, the right instrumentation. Um, yeah, so I mean, I'm not constantly scoring things in my head as I'm going through life, though. Not quite. But but some
Well,
things, like like you, I'm sure, like you're somewhere or you're talking about something and you just think about a song, even a theme song for a TV show or a film, you know, it can just completely take you back to that moment, right? That something, the connection between music and that moment in your life is huge. It's really very unique.
what's your instrument of choice when you are putting some of your ideas together?
Keys. I play keyboards. I played piano as a kid. Not a great musician. And I realized very early on that my interest was not to be an incredible musician. I had no interest in sitting and practicing and doing that. In fact, I stopped reading music. Um, but I started writing my own little pieces of music when I was a kid, just for my own enjoyment, just for the hell of it. And then I'd memorize everything and play it. Um, but yeah, but keys are really my entry into creating everything else. Yeah.
Speaking of yourself as a kid, what advice would you give anybody who wants to get in the world that you're in right now? Because it's not an easy thing to get into. And is it mostly about connections, or is it mostly about networking, getting out and creating some relationships? What advice would you give somebody who wants to be a producer slash composer slash music supervisor? Um, the world that you're in right now, what advice would you give someone who is interested in maybe trying to fill your shoes?
Mm. Yeah, it's a tough one because I came in a very different way to composing that most composers do. Um, there's a lot to that. Should I stop sharing for a minute and then just
Sure.
come back to that if you want to
Yep.
do that? Hey, now I can see you again. It's nicer. I feel like I can, yeah. Um, I there's different things, there's different routes for different jobs. Music supervision, completely separate and different from what I do. Um, and that's a tough one in its own. They're all tough in different ways because there's a lot of people doing them. And when it comes to composing in particular, I didn't come up underneath another bigger composer, which a lot of kids straight out of Berkeley do. And they spend years sometimes ghostwriting and producing music behind the curtain, essentially. And sometimes maybe they'll get a break and somebody will actually allow them to go and get their own gig, or at least let people know that they did a substantial amount of music for them. Um, because look, and the reason why these things happen, is the industry is completely involved in this. The studios want to work with people that they feel comfortable with. Who do they feel comfortable with? About 15 or 20, maybe 25, 30 guys. Um, just to give you an example, when I scored Hawthorne, which was Jada Pinkett Smith's show for Fox, sorry, for TNT. Um, that when my agent made the deal for me as a composer, one of the things they were talking about were credits and where the credits go. Now I'd earned a single card all the way back in the day on Gridlocked. And once you've done that, you don't need to fight that fight anymore. But it is a chicken and egg situation. So, like if you haven't had it before, how do you get it? All of that. Well, I'd had it. So my agent was looking for a single card. And I think at the front of the show where Snuffy Walden had his card, I actually wound up replacing him on that show. And so when my agent was talking to the head of legal affairs there, they said, well, Snuffy's done 33% of all of our television productions over the past 30 years. So he's earned that. And it was like the enormity of hearing that hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, never mind the credit. One man has controlled 33% of all of that composing real estate over a 30-year period. This is why when people ask me why is it so hard to get into composing, there's your example that can tell you exactly why. And he's not the only person. I mean, there's plenty of them. Mike posted the same thing. Um, you know, there's a lot, and there's a lot of younger guys that are doing it now. It's like all I can say is you got to know what it is you want. Um, there's a model. It's a business model. I don't, I'm not putting it down. I'm just laying out the facts, right? This is just the reality of it. I don't want to be managing the football team. That's not why I do this. I love getting my hands dirty. I love doing the actual work. So I'm not interested in subbing out my gigs to a big team of up and comers or to anybody, which is why I don't do as much work as a lot of my colleagues because it's not physically possible, to juggle that many gigs at the same time if you're actually doing it, really doing it. So yeah, I mean, but that is a route that up and coming musicians who want to get into composing can try to, get under the wing of, and maybe one day you might get lucky and you might start getting your own gigs, or you might never. You know, it's just the way it is. Because people came to me because I was doing something else. So what I always encourage people to do is, especially musicians, because you can make your own music and you can release it yourself. You don't need a big distributor these days. You can, you can find a way to get your music out there on all the platforms and work it and work it, work it on social media, get out there and gig if you can. Um, you know, you might catch the ear of somebody, or you might reach out to someone that you really want to work with and say, hey, you can check out my thing. Look at my reel that I just posted on IG, or have a listen to this thing on Spotify if you have a minute, or whatever it is that you want to do to kind of endear yourself to somebody. All I would say is if you're going to reach out to people that you want to work with and you know their work, they're not just a name to you, then that's what you really need. You need to know why you're reaching out to somebody besides the fact that they're very famous and successful. That's a big part of it.
Mhm.
And just like try to get people to hear what you're doing and get a vision for what you're doing. Demo things to picture. You can do that easily within almost every program now that's out there for musicians. You can, do the AV thing and try it out and see if you actually have the skills. Um, that's yeah. I mean, there's no easy way in. There really isn't. Because of the reasons that I've kind of described already. It's very sewn up. I mean, women represent under 10% of all working composers in film and TV in 2024. And when I started, it was like 2%.
Wow.
So, it's not gone exponentially wild in the past 25, 30 years. It's crept up like a little, it's inching up. But
Wow.
this is again what it is. Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, I could sit here and chop it up with you all day long. I really would love for you to be a co-host on my industry segment, and we can bring some people on and go down a few more rabbit holes, provided you have the time to sit
Okay,
down with me with some guests and we can have some fun. If you're open
cool.
for that, the invitation is out there for you.
Right on. Thank you. Yeah, look, I mean, again, yes, if I have time, I'd be happy to
That's
co-host.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, the time flies, and I love hanging with you, the angel. I mean, it's been fun, and I can't wait to see you again in person. Maybe you can come down one of these Tuesdays
Right
and
on.
hang out with us and
Okay.
have some pizza and some wine at Michelli's, and we can do this all over again.
Okay. Right on. Well, look, it's been such a pleasure, and so nice to know more about your trajectory and the way that you navigate this crazy industry that we're all in. Yeah, it's really cool. So this has been a lot of fun. Really
Yeah.
nice.
Well, thank you so much for having us, being on my show. Where can we find you on the social medias?
You can find me on Instagram as the angel dot super crucial, SUPA crucial. You can find me on uh I mean, I'm on Facebook, I'm on X for whatever, even though I don't do a lot on there. Yeah, I mean, Instagram is really my kind of, my
Yeah.
first port of entry. Yeah. And of course at my on my website, and you can find me, from there anywhere at uh, the angel soundclash.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. And thank you guys for all listening. We appreciate that of all the choices of things you can do, you chose to listen to us for a few minutes. We appreciate that. And if you want to know more about Team Comedy USA, go to teamcomedyusa.com. And if you want to know more about our film festival series and our outdoor drive-in movie theater experiences, go to HollywoodDrive-In-Film-Festival.com. And if you want to learn more about how to do some cool stuff in the industry, such as produce your own podcast or maybe even learn how to do stand-up comedy, you can go to pnnacademy.org and there's a link there for comedy workshops. Just click on that. There'll be some information. You can contact me directly and we can get you going on your stand-up comedy. And the Angel, I think you should take my stand-up comedy workshop.
Oh, I know. Honestly, even when I was out there with an eight-piece band, I don't really like being on stage. I have to be honest. It's just not my comfortable place. But I listen, I appreciate what you guys do. I love the comedy world, but I appreciate it as a viewer, as an audience member. I know where my skills lie.
As a comedy
I'm good.
consumer. Well,
Yeah, as a comedy consumer.
even if you don't want to get on stage, I still think you should take the workshop just to learn some nuances, formulas, and techniques, which actually might help you with your pitching or presentation or any talks you're doing. There's some cool nuggets in there that you might like.
I'll think about it. Is that
Yeah,
okay? I'll think
give it
about it.
some thought. Give it some thought. I would love to see you in my workshop.
Right on. Well, look, I really appreciate that.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you're doing it. I think it's really
It's
great.
fun. It's fun.
Yeah,
There's a lot of cool moments that pop up with everybody who
nice.
comes in, and
Yeah.
being able to share my experience over the decades is always refreshing and fun for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nice.
All right, my dear. Thank you for hanging out with us. And you guys can catch me at podbrother.com and you can catch Ref Kimbrew at kimbrew.com, Kimbrew, as in coffee, tea, or beer that's been brewed. Catch me at a sports pub, uh, sipping on some brewskis. That's how I get down. Thank you guys very much, and we will see you next time. Peace out, guys.